I decided when I was working on this thing that I wanted to, it's sort of the whim of the moment, not knowing what you're going to do in a given illustration. You want to get a color feel to it, and a lot of times you'll come up with that stuff after you've shot reference because you're just like, you just roll with instinct. But since I've got a lot of colored gels, I can light the photos I take with those and sort of inform a look. And if something seems interesting, what you get as a result of that, you're like, oh, why don't I just paint it to look like that? Here I got the reference. The reference is all set. Why don't I just copy what I'm getting back? Because, there it is. I can do, frankly, a much better painting based upon an exact photo I'm rendering instead of something I'm just sort of reimagining. So in this case, I was putting a heavy red light on my subject, and I just decided that it looked cool enough that, like, wow, that would make a cool looking cover that way. Everybody lit by this red light, and you get a little bit of contrasting light from a backlight hitting on the side. Yeah, I would normally just paint the whole thing in black and white tones and then airbrush a layer of a color later. Like, I've done that with pages where I want to have this overwhelming red color effect like you're in a dark room. Like I did that in an actual darkroom scene before, and then painted everything black and white, went in with the airbrush later, solid red over the whole thing. It got the effect I wanted, but now I'm trying it slightly different here, where I'm putting down the red first, then I'll put the darks on top of that. And, this is the way artists would most normally work, and I always work kind of backward from what people otherwise should do. Well, I think that design sensibility comes with your just being an artist rendering shapes. That they're all just shapes at the end of the day. Like, it's probably not too much of a hop and skip for going from drawing the human figure to drawing industrial design or car design or whatever. They're all just shapes. So it's a matter of how you're finding the organic nature of it, that your mind can wrap itself around that thing and then build off of that. I could draw you a car based upon my imagination of, some made up design I could think of, and it would respond to the same kind of instincts that I have about drawing the human figure. There's certain ways that we all import our influences. That's why I spend, frankly, it always feels like much more time drawing the pencils for first the thumbnail, just the conceptualization of a drawing. But then that actually goes relatively quick because I'm not killing myself with worry about how perfect or exact the photo reference, or I'm sorry, the how perfectly photographic the pose, the shapes of human form are. I'm going with instinct so that later when I shoot reference to compare against, to see how exacting I can make my drawing, I don't drive myself crazy in the sketch stage because that's going to be imperfect. And for as long as I've been doing that, it does feel like that exercises the muscle that I need to exercise in just regular figure drawing so that more natural things are recalled and remembered over time, because I am always doing a point for point comparison to a real object, sometimes a real person. And your brain holds on to things little bit by little bit. Never perfectly, which is why I always love to regard checking a live model or or an exact object. You always want to see, what does reality hold before I commit myself completely on this illustration I first did by my imagination. When you trust just your own instincts, it can always get a little wonky. The biggest reason that you wind up staying committed to something that you're not happy with is your lack of vision. It's like, you're like, I have no idea what I could do to it to make it better. It's not that you just go like, nope, that's all they're getting, that's all the time I got. Yeah. It's more that like, no, there's time to fix anything. It's more like, the limitation of your own ability to see it, to recognize what it is how you make that improvement. You can get stuck in your own ways, which I certainly am from doing this for so long and being a spoiled brat. that for the most part, when I'm working with people, I give them one layout, and they usually, unless it's got some giant defect with it, I go to final. I don't really spend abundant time giving you more and more choices to work from, because then you almost overthink something to the point that the way another person sees it may not actually bless you with greater insight than what you kind of capture or hit upon for yourself. So I feel like when I come up with some rough sketches on something, I feel like my brain is thinking through all these potential problems and solutions during that initial sketch process that another person, even though they might own the property you're working with, they're not going to have factored all those things. They're going to think kind of simply like, it needs more leg or whatever. The crotch is showing, whatever. Those are the typical kind of things. Like the crotch is showing. You mean the front half of the body? You can actually see the midsection of the human body, and that's an issue? Like, wow, I feel like it's jumping out at me. You get a lot of that. Especially when you step outside of publishing and then they're thinking about it as being something beyond a simple comic book cover. That's the beauty of comics in a way, is it's always undervalued as like, it's good enough. And so they give people like me approval to jump ahead to whatever you're doing. Well, the difference, though, even though I'm not the guy working on what you think of as being the stuff that has to get done the fastest, the truth is I'm the first guy in, because as my main gig is covers, they have to get my cover in solicitation before the book is largely even drawn. So I'm the first artist doing any art regarding the subject matter. So I wind up turning in my sketch concept based upon an early information about the script for a book. And I might, in many cases, like I've experienced for years with Astro City, I'm the first person designing a look for a character that will appear in the story, because I've got to draw them first, because the artist is like a month or two out from drawing anything. And so, even though it takes a couple of days or more for getting the painting done, I'm still way ahead, and I have to be way ahead of the talent that's actually producing the guts material.